guest today is Cornelius Fleischhaker, a German young economist who works at the World Bank, another brilliant young professional from whom we can learn a lot here by talking. Cornelius, tell us a bit, how was your trajectory? How did you decide to take the course of things as you did?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Otaviano, for having me on the show. It's a pleasure. As you mentioned, I grew up in Germany, in a small town, sort of a rural area, not very multicultural. But I guess I was always interested in other countries and, people from other cultures. My family used to have a lot of contact with foreign students that would come to our town. So we'd have people over from Asia, from Africa, Latin America. When I was 16, I decided I wanted to go abroad, so I went for a year to be in high school in the US, spent a year in Kansas, which, was a very interesting intercultural experience that I think I benefited a lot from. But after that I wanted to sort of get to know more in other places. I was very interested in Latin America, so I ended up spending half a year sort of in between high school and college doing voluntary work in the Dominican Republic. And then sort of took it from there. I started studying international relations back in Germany. We had to do a semester abroad, so I decided to do it in Brazil because, I was already in love with Latin America. I figured I speak Spanish, I might be able to pick up Portuguese in a semester. So I did that, and that's where sort of my involvement with Brazil began already, 8 years ago. And then, I did my master's here in Washington at Johns Hopkins site. Had a brief stint at the IMF, and then got the opportunity to work on Brazil at the World Bank.
Cornelius and I, together with another colleague, we did a series of pieces on the Brazilian closeness to trade, the special features of Brazilian foreign trade. Some of them ended up being published in places like the Financial Times and so on. So Cornelius, tell us a bit, which main takeaways would you highlight from this work that we did?
We did this work essentially in 2014, so sort of before the current economic crisis in Brazil, but I think it's still very timely. It started off with stating the fact that Brazil is a very closed economy, especially taking the trade openness as imports plus exports to GDP. It's among the most closed economies in the world, which might come as a surprise given that Brazil does export, a lot of commodities and other things that it's famous for. The obvious sort of reason for that people will bring up is that, Brazil is a very big country, big economy. Big economies tend to be more closed. However, that's not the full story by far, because Brazil is much more closed than you would expect given its size, its population, its GDP. So then when we dig a little bit deeper, we find out, two things. First of all, this sort of relative closeness is not entirely specific to Brazil. Other Latin American countries also have a bias in that direction. So there's probably some historical and institutional causes there. But also if you look at the micro data, you see that in Brazil there is very little dynamism, in the sense that there is a relatively small number of firms that export, a relatively limited number of products that are exported, and very few firms that sort of start exporting in any given year. I think that this is very much related with the fact that Brazil is not very involved in global value chains. So there isn't a lot of sort of trading of back and forth of components and intermediate goods, like there is, for example, in Asia nowadays, and of course in Europe as well. So I think that still today, especially looking at the recession in Brazil and the need for new sources of growth, this closeness presents an opportunity really for Brazil to get much more involved with the world economy, global value chains, and increase exports.
My own takeaway is the following. Cornelius is a brilliant young professional, has done many things despite the early stage of his career. The lesson is look for diversity of experience, look for your dreams, and work hard, because you can do like he's doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.